Ladies and gentlemen, RosterWatch Nation, welcome back to the epic RosterWatch Podcast, brought to you by RosterWatch.com. My name is Alex Dunlap, joined by the Trashman for this Week 8 waiver wire edition of the podcast. If you enjoy this content, you'd like more of this content, or if you just like to check out the waiver wire cheat sheets or anything else, the snap counts, touches, targets, the matchup tool, all that stuff is up right now at RosterWatch.com. We would love your support, but if not, man, just please give this video like a thumbs up or leave a comment, something like that. It helps people to find it, helps spread the word. And we certainly love and appreciate you guys for continuing to tune in and listen to the podcast. Also, just a quick reminder, if you're watching this only on YouTube, which is basically a very, very small percentage of you who watches this on YouTube versus the pretty big listenership on the podcast. This is just for you guys. Subscribe to the RosterWatch podcast feed because it's gonna help you immensely with the trade cast and stuff like that. Trash man, before we continue, just to make sure I'm hardwired in. I'm not breaking up or anything right now, am I?
No.
Okay. So apologies in advance. I'm getting a little icon here, but hopefully we'll be able to power through it. I did see the ever elusive and ever so scary Spectrum work truck out working on one of my neighbor's houses. So I'm worried. Hopefully they don't cut off the cable to the whole neighborhood or something like that. But always a swindle when you see that little sign. All right. So Trashman, let's talk about the waiver wire cheat sheet for this week. At the very top at the running back position, you have outlined your free agent acquisition budget bids, and there's only really one guy that you're paying up for in this top tier this week. Tell the people who it is.
It's Kenneth Gainwell of the Eagles. It's kind of a blessing, I think, in disguise for Miles Sanders owners who don't have to put him in their lineups.
It hurts so bad to say it like that, but it's true. It's like now the decision's out of your hands. You know, it's like he can't hurt you anymore. He can't hurt you anymore.
Yeah. So hopefully you can get your hands on Gainwell. Hopefully you had your hands on Gainwell.
How did this happen? Where it's like then the game that Miles Sanders goes out, they run the football like 32 times. It's so crazy, man. So crazy. Hey, I have a question about the Eagles, Trash Man. Are they legit gonna bench Jalen Hurts, even though he's been good in fantasy?
I don't think so, and that's mainly because why would they get rid of Joe Flacco then? And just have Gardner Minshew be the only other quarterback on the roster.
Well, because it's not like Jalen's hurt. If Gardner Minshew sucks, you just put Jalen back in. At this point, you don't care about. At this point, I don't think you care about breaking the will of Jalen Hurts. I think it's clear that they don't think he's the answer.
Yeah, but you feel like they would say Gardner Minshew's a better fit than maybe Joe Flacco.
Maybe, or maybe it's like maybe it was just that the Jets were like, we can't play with Mike White. You know, we can't play with Mike White for any extended period of time. Joe Flacco knows the system. Joe Flacco is the guy that we're calling up the Philadelphia Eagles for. You know, yeah. So the Eagles think the Eagles think to themselves, well, I mean, it's just Flacco. We don't really care. I don't think that he was anybody that they were looking to as any kind of long-term answer. And I think I think that they probably think it's only a 4 or 5%er that Gardner Minshew could be some sort of even medium-term answer for them. But at this point, I wonder what I'd be interested to see if there's any Eagles fans in the chat that have thoughts about that. Do you think that the Eagles brass, as fantasy players, we look at Jalen Hurts, we're like, dude, this guy always comes through with 20-point games for us. But it's
well, the thing is, they've been in some close games. You know, they could have beaten the Buccaneers.
Yeah, woulda, coulda, shoulda, man.
I mean, if you're gonna bench Hurts, then that Sam Darnold needs to be benched 3 weeks ago.
I think the Hunsbergler in the chat saying no chance they should bench Hurts. I mean, are you saying that as a Philadelphia Eagles fan and a close observer of the Eagles? Or are you saying that as a fantasy football player? because, I mean, of course, us fantasy guys say that they shouldn't bench Hurts, but the fact is they're losing football games. He hasn't been smart with the football. He gives us a bunch of, I mean, he's saying that they need to see what they got in him. But look, Hansbergler, it's like, I think they're seeing what they have in him. And I think that they'd also like to see what they've got in Gardner Minshew. They traded for him. You know?
I mean, but back to Kenneth Gainwell.
Yeah.
It looks like he's going to get quite a bit of run here, but Boston Scott should as well. So if you can't get your hands on Gainwell, I think Boston Scott makes for a nice consolation prize there too, especially if you're in a PPR league.
So we got a couple questions coming in. What's up to Hunsbergler, Kipsy, Gumprinder Deal? What's an interesting name you got there? What's up, New Life? He said Hurts is hurting the Eagles. That's coming from a Giants fan. Now that could be some Schadenfreude there. Maybe he doesn't want them to have played Jalen Hurts as a Giants fan. Godden Prinder. Can you tell what that guy's name is, Trash Man? Prinder Deal. He's saying, is Kenyan Drake droppable for anybody to the sheet? I'll add Kenyan Drake onto the list here. At the very end of the show, I always ask Trash Man. I've taken down a couple names, and I'll continue to take down names.
Kenyan Drake droppable? Are you just talking running backs or any player in particular? I mean, because, like a Michael Gallup and Alan Lazard this week, a Rashad Bateman.
Well, we'll talk about those guys whenever we get to wide receivers, and I'll ask you about all these guys. Kipsy is saying, is Hurts really the problem? They haven't turned things over to Miles. No, man, look, and look, the offensive line is going to be what the offensive line is. They got Lane Johnson back this week. I don't think it's the problem. I think their shitty coach, Nick Sirianni's the problem. And their shitty new defensive coordinator, horrible new defensive coordinator. Neither of those guys. Can you believe that they brought it in? The Philadelphia Eagles brought in two guys to call the offense and call the defense that had never called an offense or called a defense in their goddamn careers. I mean, that's probably the problem. But the fact of the matter is they're calling for Jalen Hurts. I'm mainly just asking about this because I'm wondering in one of my deepest 2 quarterback dynasty leagues whether I should be just go ahead and pick up Gardner Minshew now because we're gonna get some Minshew magic down the stretch a little bit. Okay, so we've added Kenyan Drake on there. Trash Man, you kind of alluded to some of this stuff with the wide receivers, but anything else?
The only reason I didn't have Kenyan Drake on there is because he is owned in too many leagues.
Right. Well, and we can talk about whether he's droppable for any of the guys on the sheet for sure. The sheet, let me get it. We're here talking about the waiver wire cheat sheet at RosterWatch. I don't even have it pulled up right now, but I'll pull it up. And some of these lower tier guys that are just sort of you have Rashad Penny on there. Yeah, I mean, you have Boston Scott a whole lot less as far as what you would give up for him as far as free agent bidding. Boston Scott played 33% of snaps after Miles Sanders went out last week. He got 2 targets and 8 touches. He did have the touchdown, though. Kenny Gainwell played 51% of snaps after. So basically, there was 83% of snaps open after Miles Sanders went out since he only played 17% of snaps. Kenny Gainwell took 51 of those. Boston Scott took 33 of those. So looking at a 60-40 split right there, but Kenny Gainwell is so much better than Boston Scott. I mean, it's crazy. New Life is asking if Desean Watson is a legit waiver ad this week. Can he really play this season? We'll talk about that when we get to quarterbacks. The fact of the matter is he can play this season. The question in theory he could play right now. The fact is, though, with what Houston has done, they've made it easy on the NFL to not have to go out and say that he's on the commissioner's exempt list or anything like that. Whereas if a team like Carolina were to swoop in and say, "Hey, we're bringing in Desean Watson, we're going to start this guy while there's 23 pending cases against him," at that point the NFL would have to step in and go through its various protocols or parlance or whatever it is that they would deal with, and you'd have to think that there would be something that would happen there. But technically, sure, he can play. Yeah, I mean, nothing's stopping him from playing. The only thing that's stopping him from going anywhere is the fact that things are still up in the air. Nobody's probably made the deal that the Texans want, and he has the no trade clause, so he can decide where it is that he goes. Okay, so Trash Man, any more of these running backs that you really want to talk about? We haven't really talked about any except the Eagles. I mean, it's not a good week on the waiver wire. I mean, for any of you guys that don't have the cheat sheet,
it's not a great week. some of these New England Patriots, started to pop. We saw your boy J.J. Taylor get a few touches this past week. He seems to have moved ahead of Ramondre Stevenson.
Ramondre Stevenson, a healthy scratch.
Yeah. So
I'm telling you, man, I've been saying they hate him because he stinks. It's just.
But Brandon Bolden is playing ahead of both of them, which is even more intriguing. So both of those guys, I mean, there's some interest there, I guess, in deeper leagues. David Johnson has been getting quite a few touches the last few games. And I think just because of what I think the game script will be like this week for the Texans versus the Rams, I think David Johnson's going to get quite a bit of action this week.
DJ got a little bit of revenge action this last week, like we were talking about. Thanks to you guys in Twitter, that guy Kevin, New Life, etc., for putting in these names. Let's see. Pitts has been going off lately. Would you consider trading Waller for him? Maybe, yeah. I think I would. I mean, Waller's about to go on bye. I hope that Pro Football Doc says that his ankle is he's not worried about it. He says if he wouldn't have had a bye, he thinks that he could play this week. Now he hasn't seen video, but based on what they said, that it's like the ankle on the inside portion of it, down by the heel or something. He called it some doctorly term and said that that's a subluxation of some shit. And he's like, it'll be fine, based on that initial reporting. So, but Pitts has looked amazing.
Pitts is starting to feast.
I mean,
and when he starts getting the touchdowns to go with that yardage.
Yeah, man. But hey, listen, that guy Kevin, please, if you don't listen to it already, make sure you subscribe here to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever. It won't be here on YouTube, so you got to subscribe to the actual podcast feed and listen to the Tradecast on Wednesdays. Byron does an excellent job on that. Cannot recommend it enough. That's the Tradecast here on the RosterWatch podcast feed. Just set an alert for that damn thing. All right. You want to move on to wide receiver?
Sure.
All right. Well, we talked about Allen. You'd mentioned Allen Lazard. I figured he'd be at the top of the sheet just because of the situation shaping up here with Devontae Adams and COVID. I was putting together the matchup tool this morning. Then I went to work out and sauna and all this stuff. And so I haven't seen, but has he been able to get in a clean test today? Because he had the positive COVID test on Sunday night or Monday morning.
I think it was Monday morning.
And now he has, and so we know that the reporting is that he is vaccinated. And so he has 48 hours to turn in 2 clean tests. But the problem is they play on Thursday. Do the Green Bay Packers. We look at the matchup tool. The Green Bay Packers are playing the Arizona Cardinals in Arizona on Thursday night. It's a middling matchup on the matchup tool for opposing wide receivers, but it feels like a spot that should be a good spot, even though the matchup tool takes in. I can't believe.
Devontae Adams gets such a large target share that whoever steps in for Devontae Adams,
and it's going to be Allen Lazard. We've seen this story before. I know the only thing that I think is maybe since he trusts Randall Cobb so much, and he really made an effort to bring in Randall Cobb in the offseason, maybe we see Randall Cobb. But I mean, Marquez Valdez-Scantling has just now been returned to practice to where he's opened up his 3-week window to return, right? So, I mean, we have Allen Lazard here. We have maybe Amari Rodgers, Randall Cobb, and we've seen the last 2 weeks.
Robert Tonyan even.
Yeah, we've seen these last 2 weeks, though, with Allen Lazard, there's something. I mean, he's not good, but something's starting to crop up, man. I mean, 6 targets last week on 91% of snaps. He had 60 yards, and he turned that into 60 yards and a touchdown. And then the week before that, he had the 5 targets on 85% of snaps, where he scored one touchdown as well. So Aaron Rodgers is looking for him in the red zone. This is a game with a 51-point total. I know it's just Thursday night. I mean, for me, what I would like the most if Devontae Adams doesn't go is just captaining Aaron Jones in one of our oldest leagues, Trashman, because I think it could be an Aaron Jones feasting spot if he picks up some of that, crazy target share of Devontae Adams. With that said, I think Allen Lazard's an excellent pickup, worthy of being right here at the very top. Another guy you have here right at just mainly is sort of a 1-week play, but somebody that could be, back in someone that could be wide receiver 4-ish for you on your roster. So I would think that he's not worth holding right now. It's not just a play this week. I think he's not worth holding. If he turns out to be the number 2 receiving option down the stretch for the Packers, I mean, that guy will be worthy of getting in your lineup every now and then, especially through bye week situations. Kip C has some information here. He says Gerald Everett missed an extra game because his test wasn't clear enough. So I'm not sure I would think Adams is playing. As a test is not clear enough. I mean, it's a PCR test, right? I mean, it says one thing. It says one thing or another. I would guess it's like you're good. It's like you're positive or you're negative. I don't know though, man. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not a virologist. And
you're not.
Half these assholes don't even know what they're talking about anyway, right, Trash Man? So who even knows, man? It's really, really, really hard to know. What do you think? Michael Gallup is right here at the very top too. Are you not worried at all about just everything? CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Dalton Schultz, all the.
I feel like Cedric Wilson, and between Cedric Wilson and Noah Brown, the targets they've been getting, I feel like there's enough for Gallup to get back in there, and he's a big play guy, so he doesn't need that many targets to do some damage. And the thing is, I think honestly he might get traded. So I feel like even if he doesn't, get quite the target share back that he did from before, I think if he goes to another team, he could be a really integral part of an offense. So.
Omar F says props to Trash Man for the CG Uzoma calls past 2 weeks. He might be psychic. He might be psychotic. What's up, Omar F? Thanks for tuning in, brother.
Thanks, Omar.
All right, so I don't know, man. So the rest of these guys at the top, I mean, if you've listened to this show a bunch, you know that we love Rashad Bateman. I mean, obviously, you're going to continue picking kids. I mean, I would love to stash and hold Rashad Bateman and just to see how he continues to evolve in that offense. Those running backs are just so miserably bad. Like they're going to have to keep throwing the ball and stuff. And Rashad Bateman's a good guy to move the chains with, man. He's good. He's good.
I think they might move back to Tyson Williams, seeing what they have in him there.
They just have to. They don't trust him, but who cares? You can't. This dust ball, Devontae Freeman, Le'Veon Bell stuff is just so bad. And then like Laviska, I can't believe you should be picking up all these guys at the very top of who Trash Man has listed on the cheat sheets. The Michael Gallups, the Batemans, the Alan Lazards, Laviska Shenault. I'm not as big on Darius Slayton because once Kadarius Toney and Sterling Shepard all come back, he'll turn back into dust again. But I think the rest of these guys have really good rest of season outlooks. And a prospective flyer on Will Fuller for whenever he gets back. Especially if Desean Watson can swindle his way down to Miami. Jesus, can you imagine the boon you would have on your hands for the last few games of the season if you got Desean Watson
reunited,
Fuller reunited down in the 305. A lot of good tight ends here, Trash Man, and of course, there's so many more wide receivers. Trash Man probably has about 15, 16 more of these guys that are just kind of in this 0 to 5% recommended fab range, but how about the tight ends? Some good ones this week. I can't believe Ricky Seals-Jones is still less than is he really still owned in less than 55% of leagues?
I thought he was 52 coming out of the last weekend, but
well, that's crazy, man. He's getting a lot of good usage. Logan Thomas should be back not this week, but the week after. So you're only getting him for another week or so.
Yeah, Ricky Seals-Jones is owned in 53% of leagues.
Okay, well. Yeah, Ricky Seals-Jones should be owned. Our guy Omar mentioned CJ Uzoma. You're keeping him on here, I guess, even though the upcoming matchups probably weren't as good as that. You talked about that Baltimore matchup, how good that's been. I know that's been kind of buttressed by the fact they faced a lot of good tight ends, but CJ Uzoma looked like a good tight end. The only problem with him is just a minuscule target share, for sure. What do you think? Any of these other guys that you want to touch on? We have a bunch of questions here that people want to know about guys they can drop.
Well, Robert Tonyan, I think if Devontae Adams is out, gets a boost there. Tommy Sweeney in Buffalo. I mean, Dawson Knox is tight end 3 on the season, and Sweeney's going to be filling that role for at least a couple games. So
is Dawson Knox tight end 3?
Yeah.
Yikes. Is Dawson Knox owned in more than that many leagues?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Dawson Knox. He's probably an 80 something percenter at this point.
I had to drop him last week in one of our leagues that has shallow benches. So see if I could swindle that guy back up on waivers. Not sure I'll be able to if he's been tight end 3 on the season. Okay. And then I was going to also mention, I can't believe that you have Mo Alley Cox down here so low. Your sweetest Mo Alley Cox.
I mean, he's not getting that much of the target share there.
This is a great question that Kip C asks. And this could, I mean, what's your general DST strategy when it comes to waivers? Pick one up or wait and not use your waiver priority fab until players clear. So my general strategy is, unless it's just a nut spot, like, I mean, this week, maybe Cincinnati is the one that's sort of out there to me that stands out as one that I might use a waiver play on, but never like a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or something like that. I'll want to be able to move up and see if I can get to that first spot in case one of those big injuries hits. But if I'm sitting back there at 10, 11, 12, something, and there's one like Cincy who I really want this week versus whatever the Jets are going to do at quarterback, that's what I'm gonna want to do. As far as fab, I don't know. It's for me, it's just it's a week to week thing, and I'll look at it. And I know Trashman has Trashman. Why don't you tell him your take on before we talk about quarterback, just tell him your take on the Cowboys. You have an interesting take on the Cowboys. Just tell him your take on the Cowboys. I mean,
if you just look at their scoring profile, since the beginning of the season, the Cowboys have, at least in Yahoo leagues, have not scored less than 7 points in a given week, and they scored double digits, I think, in 3 out of the last 4 weeks as a defense. So,
despite the fact that they're not a good defense,
they have a lot of takeaways, they have a lot of interceptions, and they capitalize on them, and they've just been doing really well in fantasy. The matchup this week isn't the greatest against the Vikings, but they've had worse ones
at the Vikings.
Yeah, they've had worse ones and like I said, they haven't scored less than 7 fantasy points a game this season. So if their team, somebody probably had to drop this last week. And if you can get them on the cheap, or not, having to sacrifice a lot for it, then, I think Dallas is a good defense to have, rest of the season. I think in the next 2-3 weeks, they have the Falcons, I think, coming up the week after this. And then after that, they have Denver. Well, they have Denver and then the Falcons after Minnesota. And those are 2, I think, really good matchups for opposing defenses. So I just think Dallas is a good defense, even though maybe not this week isn't the ideal week to have them, but if you can stash them, I think they're a good defense to have.
Somebody mentioned Desean Watson earlier, just for our quarterback talk. Again, you can find the recommendations here, the exact lists, the various tiers, and the free agent budget bids. The cheat sheet's already up over at rosterwatch.com. But Trashman, I mean, I started picking up Desean Watson last week, in the shallower leagues where he's available, whenever I just heard these rumors start to come up, just because I feel like even if I have a 10% chance at, having a top 5 fantasy quarterback laying in my lap as a shot in the arm to one of my teams through the course of the season, I'm going to take it. It feels like the interest is out there and the interest is real. It feels like the interest maybe became more real whenever Matt Rule benched Sam Darnold this last week for PJ Walker. Now, who knows? Philly is said to be out of it. Tua is playing better.
He's playing a little bit better, yeah.
So I don't know what Miami's thinking, or I don't know if Miami's thinking like, hey, dude, maybe this is the time where we can get a 3-way deal going where we can swindle these Washington football team or something into getting in a 3-way with us, and we can send them Tua based on the strength of these last 2 games. I feel like that there's enough talk out there that something like that could possibly be happening. So I feel like it's worth putting a little bit of free agent money. If you have the spot on your bench, just to see what happens coming up into the NFL trade deadline.
Well, if that's the case, then maybe you need to have some interest in the receivers on those respective teams that you can maybe pick up.
Sure. Well, we talked about Will Fuller. That's a great, that sort of thing is something that you should think about. All right, let's get to the questions, Trashman. Everyone's favorite part. We have a question from that guy, Kevin, in the chat. This isn't like this, but he's just asking, what are your general thoughts on a guy like Keenan Allen? Would you trade him for a guy like Deontay Johnson right now? Deontay Johnson just gets all the targets. As long as Ben, probably not in Dynasty, just because I don't know what's going to happen with that quarterback situation once Ben's gone. But Keenan Alamein, he's popping up on the injury report already again to start this week.
Well, that's pretty good. I mean, the thing is, Keenan Allen isn't having terrible games. He's just not scoring any touchdowns. He has 1 touchdown on the season.
What is like just on? I don't even know.
And he's on the injury report for dental work this week.
Okay, I just saw that he was on the injury report. It's just dental.
Yeah.
Well, I think he'll probably be fine unless it's anything unless it's a kind of some kind of root canal or something. I mean, Keenan Allen so far this year, you're looking at. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me look at just in half-point PPR and just kind of see what we're looking at here. 14.1 fantasy points per game. Deontay Johnson's won 12 fantasy. What? Oh, hold on. Sorry, I had the wrong year selected. That didn't seem right. Okay, Keenan Allen, 11.2 fantasy points per game. Deontay Johnson, 15.5 PPR, 50 targets versus 58 targets, but 50 targets in only 5 games. I wish I had my ranking sheet pulled up right now so I had all the stats in front. I mean, I just think just looking at these easy little counting stats, I think that I would probably lean towards Deontay Johnson. All right, Trashman. Yeah, I'll just answer yes to this. You can drop Jarrett Patterson, right? If you're an Antonio Gibson owner. Yeah. Okay. Are you worried about Gibson still?
I mean, he's not out of the clear, but you can drop Patterson right now.
Okay. This is an interesting one. What about Damian Williams? I mean, because David Montgomery's coming back, and Damian Williams has been cucked by Khalil Herbert.
He has, and it seems like they like Herbert in the passing game over Williams, which is interesting.
Herbert looked good.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I would rather try to trade him if you could, but I mean, he's droppable.
What about Ernest Johnson now that Nick Chubb's coming back?
Kareem Hunt isn't coming back though yet.
Okay, so
Kareem Hunt's out for another 2 games probably.
So you've seen enough out of D'Ernest to say, like, man, I'm going to hold him on my roster for maybe, he could be the Kareem Hunt for the next 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. I asked you this last week, so it was the toughest one. I already know what the toughest one that I've gotten in the chat this week is, so I'll ask you that one last. This one might not be as tough because it was the toughest one we got last week. Allen Robinson. You said last week, drop him.
Yeah. You still drop him.
Ramondre Stevenson.
Yeah, you can drop him.
Demetric Felton in a deep league.
In a deep league, I might hold on just to see if he might get some of that.
I don't know how deep it was, but he just said in a deep league.
Because if there's a small chance it might be Felton who they use as the passing down back when Chubb comes back. So if you can hold on to him for 1 game to see in a deep league, it might be worth it.
How about Latavius Murray?
I don't want to have anything to do with any of those Baltimore running backs right now.
How about Trey Sermon?
Yeah, you can drop because Jermichael Hasty's back in the mix. I mean,
they hate him.
Jeff Wilson will be coming back.
You should probably hate him if they hate him. Rondeal Moore.
Yeah, I think Zach Ertz getting in that mix. Moore looks like the 5th option now at best.
I mean, I can't believe this is getting asked on the week after. The week after that, he just had a good game. Kenyan Drake. Josh Jacobs,
he's had pretty good standalone.
Yeah, no, don't drop Drake, especially with who knows what that chest injury was to Josh Jacobs.
Yeah,
the Hunsbergler is asking about Allen Robinson. We just answered about him. You can drop him. The Omar
AJ Dillon.
Omar F is asking about AJ Dillon. He just asked in the chat in a 12-team league.
He's droppable. I mean, I think maybe he gets a touch more action with Devontae Adams being out. Maybe there's more. Maybe they lean more on the running game.
And if I'm an Aaron Jones owner, I'm going to hold on to AJ Dillon. I just for some reason I am in one league, and he's for some reason I can't stomach it to drop him. But if I'm just holding on to him as a voodoo doll for somebody else's handcuff, I think it would be okay to drop that guy. All right, Trash Man, here it is. The hardest question. Can you drop him? Because he's one of your all-time favorites. Atlanta Falcons running back, Mike Davis.
Oh yeah. I think they moved right over to Cordell Patterson after the bye. And there's just not enough upside for Davis that I can see to hold on to him if you don't have to.